You know that one song you can't get enough of? Chances are it was made with a sample from Splice. Explore top packs made by your favorite producers, sketch out song ideas in seconds with Create Mode, and dive into a sample catalog that's so deep, it's dangerous. Find out why Splice is the industry's not-so-secret secret. Visit splice.com and try for free today. Welcome to the Fader Interview. I'm Alex Robert Ross, editorial director of The Fader. Crystal Reality Volumes 1 and 2, the first two EPs from the Philadelphia band Empath, were truly chaotic. 13 minutes of pop music played at a furious pace, recorded into microphones ripped from the video game Rock Band. Drummer Garrett Koloski beat the hell out of his kit. Jem Shanahan had only just started playing any musical instruments at all. Randall Kuhn's bass synths occasionally rattled the whole mix, and lead singer and guitarist Catherine Ellickson was barely discernible as the songs lurched from major chord to major chord. Their debut album, Active Listening: Night on Earth, released in 2019, struck an even more impressive balance between noise, punk, new age, and pop. It didn't hurt that they used real microphones either, but there was still a discernible chaos to their sound. On Visitor, their new album, Empath still sound like themselves. There are sherbet hooks and weird samples, sounds that are hard to place, gurning choruses followed by transportive ambient interludes. But thanks in part to producer Jake Portrait of Unknown Mortal Orchestra, the noise has mostly been stripped back, the pace has slowed, and, strangest of all, you can actually hear Ellickson's voice now. Rather than recording the project in an hours-long splurge, as they had in the past, Visitor has been poured over and reworked. The result proves what anyone who picked up Crystal Reality has known for years. The Empath have always had killer songs beneath the buzz. Earlier this week, I caught up with Ellickson and Kuhn to talk about slowing things down, chopping horror samples into pop songs, and touring as an indie band in 2022. I'm sure you guys have been busy in the last 5 days since Visitor came out.
Yeah.
You're about to go out on tour as well. So I assume you're just in and out of practice and just things are a bit frantic.
Yeah, we haven't practiced because Garrett's in LA. So we're going to have probably a busy week next week before we leave. It's only a 3-day tour next week.
Last time I spoke to you guys, we were at a bar in Brooklyn for that Gen F feature just after the album came out 2.5 years ago, I guess.
Wow.
That's fucked up.
The process that you've been through for Visitor is so different. You've really taken a lot more time with this record and it's created a very different album. How long did it take to write and record Visitor?
I guess the writing is hard to pin down because I had songs just like in my voice memos for a long time before we really did anything with them. But I feel like we probably started, I could even check my voice memos of when we had the first practice together of a song, but it was probably either right before we did a long tour in November, December 2019 or we started January 2020. But we must have already had songs by January 2020, but it's hard to remember. At least January 2020 until we finished mastering probably May of 2021.
So that's a really comparatively, for Active Listening, we were talking about a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah. In terms of the writing on that, I have no memory of how long that was. I don't remember. I mean, I feel like, it always gets down to the wire a little bit when we're have the date to record. We're oh shit, we gotta finish these songs. But the recording itself of that record was only 5 days, start to finish.
That longer process, how much of it involved you guys sort of editing things? I mean, the sound here is different. I mean, for a start, Catherine, your vocals are a lot clearer in the mix, and a lot of things are clearer in the mix. I mean, and things have been slowed down. You've taken time to and given the album a bit of space to breathe. Do you think that is a sort of symptom or result of this slowed down process that was in some way sort of spurred on by the pandemic?
I feel like we kind of wanted to do that regardless, have everything be a little bit easier to hear, because I feel like we're always we're playing all these intricate parts, but you can't really tell what's going on in a lot of it or something. And I don't know, maybe for me it was kind of I was really focus on the songwriting, and it was sometimes I feel all the noise and everything can take away from it. that's just how I was feeling at the time, I guess. And like just letting the songs be like what they are and not trying to cover them up or hide them or something. But at the same time, we all like that kind of like warm analog sound, and like, the heavy fucked up parts, I think, are part of the fun of it. So we didn't want to like take that out, but kind of just make everything a little more discernible. I don't know.
After the last record, we got a lot of calls, like, not calls, but like our close friends are like, the bass is too loud, can't hear Kathy sing at all, So we tried to, do this one a little different, but not really stray away from the idea or goal, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of like limiting if you just are like, let's just cover everything in a layer of noise. That you can only really do so much with that. And, you can't really make the same record twice. I feel like for me as a songwriter, I've like evolved, and I'm way more proud of the songs on this record. And so it's kind of like just letting them be what they are.
How much of a challenge is it to remove those layers and still, how confident were you when you started this process of retaining your sort of inherent empathness? Because you're stripping away a lot of that noise, and obviously that's not just what this band is, but it's a huge part of what you were known for initially, and what a lot of the press coverage was, that you were recording into these like the mics that you'd ripped from Rock Band games. I remember you describing it as lo-fi but not necessarily analog. Was there a challenge involved in saying, okay, we're still going to maintain what is inherently us, but we're going to strip all of this stuff away?
I don't remember worrying about it at all. It didn't really ever occur to me that would be not ideal or something. Because I just feel like the instrumentation to me is like and like how we all play is like what is exciting to me about the band. So it's like, that's all going to be the same.
Is it a little scarier to be more open in the mix, to have that stuff? Yeah, to be cleaner, to be more audible. Did there feel like there's a bit more pressure on that?
I don't know. I was just really excited about the song. So I was like, it felt like the right thing to do. Like I felt like maybe before I was like hiding a little bit, like feeling maybe more insecure, like uncertain of my singing ability or something. So I think this time around I had more confidence and like was just really into the songs. And so I was like, I feel like I want it to be heard in the way of like, oh, this is a song I want to sing along to or something. When we play the songs live, it's like they're all like really loud and chaotic. So it doesn't really feel, I mean, yeah, the recording's like a little bit different, but it just feels like playing the songs live, it's kind of like all the same like energy. So there's really no difference in that regard, I guess.
When did you know that you wanted to work with Jake, and what made you know that he was the right person to go with for this album?
We had a meeting with him in January 2020, and just like hanging out with him, it just like felt like he understood our influences and like what the sound we wanted was. And also on the other hand, was like just out of our like realm of, stuff we had been doing and like realm of technical expertise or something. Like it just seemed like he could take us somewhere that we couldn't take ourselves or something. And like, just felt like he understood who we were, but also like where it could go. And it wasn't just like working with someone who was already like part of our group or something, because we've always been really insular in how we worked, like working with our friend Sean, who's like, been our friend for years and years. And so he's like in that like inner circle. So it's kind of like we want that outside perspective on it. And it felt like he was able to give us that. And he was great to work with.
Musicians always tell me like, yeah, we met up with our producer at the beginning and we had a couple of options. We went with this person. You would talk about influences and stuff. Like, what's the conversation you have with that person on both sides, and how do you come to the conclusion in the end that like, yeah, no, that we want to go there? Because there are lots of people who could have maybe sort of challenged you or pushed you out of your comfort zone. Like, what does that conversation actually entail?
We went to his studio. He was kind of just explaining everything that, like, I don't know, I'm trying to remember. He was like taking us around the studio, showing us everything. We were just chatting. We started talking about like music we were into. And I feel like we had like a long conversation about just like music we liked.
Yeah, we vibed on a lot of the same stuff. And then I think we went to a tiny cafe he didn't buy. And it was kind of a quick vetting process between all the people that we wanted to work with. It was a short list of availability people that we could work with, and then kind of pick the best of those. And then, of course, Sean, who produced the last records, was there with us the whole time, too, through the whole recording process. So it felt safe.
Yeah, I think it was just like a personality thing. Like, we felt good about it. Like, we were like, this is someone we could we want to hang out with, and like are inspired by his like approach to stuff. And I remember saying something about like, he's like, well, vocals wise, like, what are you, I don't know if that was a question, but I remember talking about vocal stuff and just like saying like, oh, I like this effect that they haven't, that's on this record. And he's like, oh yeah, I know exactly how to do that. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. He just like had the ability to be like, yeah, I can do that, which has been a struggle of just like, well, how do we like make something out of nothing? And then it's kind of like, oh, finally someone can just help us.
Did you know back then that you would be wanting to take that much more time with the album?
I feel like probably, yeah. Like, I feel like doing a record in 5 days is not ideal. And I had a lot of, I don't want to say regrets, but like things if we had kept playing the songs, I probably would have done differently in the first record. I don't know. Yeah, just wanting to develop the sounds more and not be like glued to like the very first thought you have about something, which was fun. It was really fun to like, hear a song one day and then like 2 weeks later have an idea and be able to like incorporate it. I feel like that's the most fun thing about it.
Catherine, when you talk about lyrics for a start, there seems to be an overall vibe to an album. And it's the same, I think, with the sort of atmospherics on an Empath album. There were touchstones here that tended towards like the gothic. Is that fair to say? Like certain films in particular?
Yeah, well, Sean and Garrett were like hanging out one day and they were just like taking a bunch of samples from like, I think it must have been around Halloween because they were taking samples from a bunch of horror films. And we had done that on Liberating Guilt and Fear. There was like The Exorcist was on that. And then they ended up getting some sounds from Wicker Man and Nosferatu. And we had those in the back pocket until the end. They were like, what samples do we have? And we went through them all. But in terms of lyrics, I just like things that if you listen to it and then there's like a raw emotional feeling that comes out of it, that's always the songs that I'm like attracted to. So that's kind of where my mind goes when I'm writing lyrics. The process of songwriting is cathartic in the sense it's like I have this feeling, but I don't really know how to put it into like articulate words or something. So I'm like, a picture will come into my mind that feels like a description of what I'm feeling or something. And then the lyrics become like I'm trying to describe what I'm seeing in my mind, which becomes kind of like a story or a narrative in a way. And sometimes those images are memories.
It's subconscious,
I guess. And then I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Like there's an overarching theme of something I was feeling at the time. And now I'm able to like process that in a more conscious way or something.
And Elvis Comeback Special seems to be a song in particular where you're sort of pulling maybe something personal and then this image of Elvis Presley, late era Fat Elvis. Could you talk me through your late Elvis theory about like what's so poignant about late Elvis to you?
I mean, he was the most famous guy in the world at one point, and then sort of his performance sort of devolved into doing karate on stage. It's really wild. Also, just like being a person surrounded by, oh, Elvis, man, you're brilliant. Everything you do, your movies are great. His movies are shit.
Mm-hmm.
It plays with like the ego of someone who's like a creator or something. And then because he's actually very talented. Elvis, he's a great singer. He can't really play guitar, but also and just like watching his career sort of digress into drugs and just his mob involvement and everything. Like it's such a wild story. I don't know. Do people get caught up with shit like that now? I guess so,
Yeah, something about seeing like this broken man on the cusp of death, just like belting it out because that's all he knows how to do. It's the raw emotionality of that, as I've said before, it's like, that's like what I get into.
I'll go back to, you were talking about when you had your first conversations about this album with Jake and as a group, you were talking about certain touchstones and certain things that you're into. For me, it's always been sort of an equal balance, regardless of how it's recorded and how lo-fi it sounds. There's always been this sort of balance of pop and noise. And the pop influences here are particular, because there are real hooks on this record, more so than ever before, I think. And real, like, proud, like, wild hooks. We talked last time about Britney Spears being somebody that you guys are drawing from.
Yeah, using the word baby. Yeah, I like those, turning those like pop tropes on their head a little bit. I don't know, I'm a person who's attracted to hooks. When I hear a song, I'm like, damn, that's catchy. I need to listen to that like 10,000 times. But I also like when hooks are like unexpected or like they go on for like too long or something. Or not too long, but it's like, whoa, that keeps going and going. You think something's gonna be like, oh, that's that's the hook. It's like this one little part, but then it's like it kind of doesn't repeat or something. I don't know. Just like I just like when songs are catchy, but they don't, but in like in an unexpected ways or something. Yeah, sometimes when writing, I'm like I get scared, but I'm like, oh, this is like catchy, but also has like a normal pop song structure. Like I have to do something to make it weirder because that's boring. But like I don't know. Try to switch things around.
Yeah, I mean, Genius of Evil, I think, is a pretty good example of that, right? It sounds like a pop song, but then when you actually pull it apart, it doesn't really follow any sort of standard, basic structure that you would expect.
Yeah, I like when that happens. You're like, oh, I had one part of the song that I really liked that felt like it was a cool hook, where it's like lying or whatever it is. I was like, I like that. That was like, that's my Lucinda Williams thing or something. I don't know. That's what I was thinking when I wrote it. Or I was like, there's something kind of country about that. But then just kind of stopping there, and I'm like, I'm not gonna like base the whole song around this one notion. I like that it's kind of like a meandering vocal part that's like memorable at the same time. And the song kind of goes in an unexpected direction.
There's a degree of complexity there that seems like it can only come from four people who really understand each other that well, because you can't really pull things apart and stitch them back together and have like tempo changes and things like that. Do you think you could even have done that like 3 years ago?
Well, I think it's funny, like sometimes I'll bring songs to Garrett and I'll be like, this is not going to make any sense, but somehow magically he like gets it. Or I'm like, we're going to do this 3 times, then we're going to switch this here and then do this, and then he'll like remember. And I don't know, like I feel like that's just a credit to his drumming. Like he understands the feeling of like what I'm going for, and then like changing it up and like putting an instantly like memorable and interesting drum part on top of it or something. And I just feel like that's like kind of just the chemistry we have. I think he just like is able to translate what I'm telling him, which to me, I'm like, no one's going to understand this. I don't know how to explain what the idea of this is.
You guys share an abstract language when you're piecing these things together. All the parts have different names.
Yeah.
A lot of made up words.
Yeah.
Because
like a song like Paradise, for example, I'm like, how the fuck am I going to explain all the different parts of the song? And they like repeat at different weird amounts of time, but somehow it doesn't end up being that hard to explain.
Is that like between all four of you? Like, Big Randall, how hard is that to work your way inside of this this language? Is it something that all four of you are on the same wavelength with?
in the situations that we're writing together, a big chunk of this record, I was there kind of putting the bass lines together as they were figuring it out. But a lot of times I'll just kind of sit back and watch or listen and try and piece it together, or, add my 2 cents in. It's not bad. If you were in the room, you'd be like, oh, I know what the Dringly Drangle is. It's got to be in there.
Everybody knows what the Dringly Drangle is. Yeah, it's like once you have the recording down, it's like you start to see the logic, and it's like it's hard to put it into words, but it's like, if we can get to the point of like having at least a drum and guitar demo, it's like there is a pop song underneath there, I promise. It's just like, sounds really fucked up right now. But it's kind of like you chisel away at it.
There was more time to chisel this time. You had a little bit more space maybe, and sometimes it can be a bit of a blessing to sort of have to rush because you have to be done. It's just like, yeah, no, we're just getting this out in like 4 or 5 days. Like, as you say, Kathy, it's not the ideal recording process, but it's like, yeah, we've just done it and now it's out and now people like it. Was it hard to know sort of when to stop working these songs, when to stop pushing the complexity, to stop saying, hey, maybe we could like slow the drums here and add a bridge here? Like, how did you know when something was finished?
Well, in terms of like the song structure, that did have kind of like a hard timeline because we were only in Jake's studio for probably 5 days, and that's where we did all the drums. So that wasn't changing unless you wanted to just take the drums out of a whole section, which I think did happen in Passing Stranger.
Oh yeah, he put like a bridge or a break there.
He took the drums out of that like verse that comes back or whatever.
In your small hand you held the figurine, felt the broken glass and counted every piece. You cried until your knees were weak. You would never tell, and no one could ever see just how when you were a child, leaving the house with the windows wide.
Other than that, it wasn't kind of like these songs were like amorphous and they could be constantly changing. It was just kind of like within that limitation of like, these are the parts of the song, this is a song. It's like, what do we want to add or take away? I don't know. We probably spent a good few months trying different things, overdubbing guitar or replacing guitar. I had to redo my vocals on one song, I think, or maybe he didn't even keep it. I don't remember, but but then eventually we did have a deadline because it was like a mastering thing. If we wanted the record to come out at a certain time, then we had to put the order in because the records are so backed up. So we ended up being like, okay, we gotta wrap this up.
We sent Jake a lot of information, many overdubs. I gave him so many like keys and chords and pads and shit that I was like, oh no, know where to put these. So regardless of whether it made it on or not, he really had his work cut out for him. We sent him a lot of info to mix in there.
Yeah, I think we sent him like me and Garrett like doing like hand claps, but it was like on the offbeat to this, I think to Paradise, and then they weren't like lining up because it was really hard to like clap on the upbeat or something, and we were like, he'll move it around, he'll make it fit in. So we're just sending things that just fully were not in time and didn't fit in the song, and just being like, fuck it, he'll figure it out.
Kind of a subtractive process on his end, I think, towards the end until the deadline came. So
we'd get sent mixes and we'd be like, where are all these things that we sent you? And he'd be like, no, we're not doing that.
This is a question that comes up a lot given what the world's been like the last couple of years, but you got moving on this album, you had voice notes from like 2 and a bit years ago. How does your relationship with the album change over 2.5 years? I mean, the space between you like singing the first voice note into your phone and now is longer than the period between probably your first ever band practice and your debut album. That's quite a long time in like the gestation period of this band. And you've just got this collection of songs to sit with in that time. How does your relationship change with those songs, if it does at all?
Yeah, it was like a very slow evolutionary process of the song. So I feel like I just appreciated them more and more on the way. Like, I don't know. I think like by the end, I was just like more in love with them than the beginning. Because it kind of reached this point where I was like able to, it had been so long since they had been written or like the lyrics had been written. I was able to look back and be like, understand the themes of the record before it came out, which I had never really been able to do before. And then I was like, I can actually a little bit more articulately speak about what's going on here, which was kind of useful. Because before it's kind of like, I don't know, it's happening. There was definitely a day where I was like, I'm going to read all the lyrics and like try to find the themes of my own lyrics or something. And that gave me a deeper appreciation for all the songs, I think.
For me, it kind of bought me some time to learn how to play keyboard. Yeah, I know that I've been playing keyboard for like 10 years, but I didn't really know what anything was. So I did take some time to like figure some like harmony theory out to aid in the recording process, which did help a lot.
Have you started writing things, having finished the recording process a while back? Have you found yourself writing again for future stuff, even if it's not like set in stone?
Me and Randall split what do you call it? A copy of Ableton.
Yeah.
license to
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Ableton.
Split a license.
We split a license. And so I feel like since the summer, I hadn't really written anything I was really excited about until the summer. And I was like, then got this license of Ableton. And I was like, I want to figure out how this works. And so I was like recording, trying just to produce myself like some songs I had written. And that was like a really, I don't know, interesting process. A lot of suffering involved, but also like, it was like a lot of high highs and low lows of just like what the hell am I doing? Like I suck, or like, whoa, this is awesome. And so I have those songs, but now I'm kind of like back in the mode of like, I'm excited to write another Empath record. And yesterday I came up with something I'm excited to flesh out. And so I kind of just want to write a song like every couple days, and then like hopefully in a couple months we'll have time to practice, maybe once the tour is over.
Feel unknown. Do you know who's coming after you? One on the phone after you. You're always missing out something. I'm somebody who really wants space around you. Someone waving, there's someone waving, there's someone
It's hard touring through COVID. It's really weird. Everything is so much different. We used to like go around, we would sleep on people's floors and shit. No one wants the band to come over because, you're got done with 10 super spreader events. No, I'm just kidding. But they're just like, no, you can't stay here anymore. So just like the cost of things has gone up so much. We bought a used van for the last tour in October. The used car market sucks. You can't buy like vehicles right now, especially anything that could be remotely used for a work vehicle. It's just
Everyone wants to scam you.
everyone wants to scam you. Yeah, so it's the whole, you don't want to say like marketplace. Everything has just sort of changed. It's been turned on its head. It's become even harder for independent musicians to kind of do anything with their time remotely constructive, I guess. Which I mean, it's reasonable because it's a pandemic. Like you can't, like we're playing public events and everything, so it's like that's obvious that's not going to change, but it's just getting harder for folks out there.
There were so many attempts, some of which were like extremely lame, and some of which I thought were more promising during the pandemic, to do something like innovative with all of that, to try and create some sort of outlet is the wrong word. Was there anything that came out of the pandemic that you're like, oh, actually, no, this is something that we could keep doing even after we don't have to wear masks?
No. I don't know. Maybe there's something I'm not thinking of. The live streaming, really not for me. It's like all the bad parts of playing a show and none of the good.
Yeah, not all music really translates well to just, being streamed on the laptop, like the couple that we did, we were, so pleased that it went well, but at the same time we're like, it doesn't translate the same on a screen as to being in the room with the kick drum and everything like that.
Yeah, and it's just a pain in the ass to set up, especially it's like hard to capture our sound. So it's like, how are we going to record this? And like, it's just a lot of technical shit. And then I'm just like, well, this is stupid. There's no one even here. We're in a room by ourselves.
I think a lot of the large scale productions really looked awesome. I know there was the one it's the game that everybody plays. You run around and I think you just run around and shoot everybody, but like Travis Scott's concert where
Fortnite?
Yeah, Travis Scott, he did like the Fortnite concert where he's like flying through the sky and shit, but it's just like no one can afford to do that on our level, Like I think that's really cool and interesting or whatever, but it's not everybody can do that.
So what now? It just sucks for a while. Like it sucks until it just gets a little bit better, but it maybe never gets back to sucking as little as it did before.
It sucked before too.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what I was thinking. I don't remember bands coming up and being like, yeah, man, we just spent 14 weeks in a van and it fucking ruled. I loved it.
It's hard to predict. I'm not generally optimistic person, so I'm just like, yeah, we'll just wait and see. Things have been like pretty chill when the weather gets warmer, and there's usually like a bad time when the weather is cold. And touring sucks when it's cold anyway, so I'm like, okay. If we can't tour in January anymore, that's not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, hopefully things will just slowly get better. But maybe things will always just be a little bit worse than they were before, and you adapt to that. But that's just kind of how the world turns. But I don't know, I like recording music, so we'll probably always do that regardless.
Yeah, I guess it's just since the shows are becoming fewer and more far between, each one is a bit more sweet. I remember last summer going to some outdoor raves and being like, wow, this is amazing. Just getting that total feeling of like when I first started watching live music again. So yeah, when you get a piece of it, it's like, wow, this is fully enlightening. So there's silver lining. I didn't want to make it all negative.
Yeah, you have more appreciation.
If there was one thing you could tell everyone, I guess, whether that's like somebody who works for a magazine or just fans or people who see you on tour, like supporting another artist or anything, what that could like make life better for independent acts, what would you just ask people to do to make life easier?
Buy merch. That's money right in our pockets. That's pretty much like the best thing that you can do, I feel like, to support somebody.
Directly supporting buying merch and through.
But like
the
at the
band,
show specifically, if you have a show, or if not, then their web store. But like taking out the middle person, it's hard when it's like, well, we're not really at a level where we're like really making money off of tours, so it's not really a loss of money per se, but it's just like a loss of like connection to real people, and that's the biggest loss for me, I think. It doesn't feel real unless you're like around other people and you feel like you're part of a greater community or something. When everything's online, it's like kind of feels like, what's the point? I want to connect to real people in the real world.
Do you still feel like you have that sense of community in Philly or like around the band generally, that there would always be that sense of community?
I feel like for me, there's like this web of people that are like doing things that I find really interesting and also like a lot of those people I call my friends. And so in that sense that, yeah, for sure. Like there's people I want to like, would love to like collaborate with or like just go see their show, and that's, that's what the definition of a community is, I guess. Like, yeah, there's people that I definitely feel like we're supported by our friends here. And so that's a good feeling. It's hard when it's the winter and everyone's inside and you're like, do I even have any friends? But
they're also just inside somewhere else.
Yeah, they're inside somewhere else.
That is an uplifting place to end, I think. Yeah, I mean, comparatively, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're all still out here.
All that said, have an amazing time playing the shows.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, and thanks again for making time to chat with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
That was Empath talking to The Fader. Their new album, Visitor, is out now via Fat Possum. The Fader interview is engineered by Tony Giambroni. The executive producer is Alex Robert Ross, and the associate producer is Salvatore Macchi. We'd like to thank Loughton Audio for providing our microphones. You can find them online at lautenaudio.com. And we'd like to thank James Ivey for providing our intro music. If you've enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate it if you left a rating and a review. And don't forget to keep an eye on thefader.com for essential music news, interviews, and essays. We'll be back soon with another episode of The Fader Interview. Goodbye until then. You know that one song you can't get enough of? Chances are it was made with a sample from Splice. Explore top packs made by your favorite producers, sketch out song ideas in seconds with Create Mode, and dive into a sample catalog that's so deep, it's dangerous. Find out why Splice is the industry's not-so-secret secret. Visit splice.com and try for free today.